area of accountancy. And welcome everyone who are locals here, and some of you have crew over from the different countries. Welcome to Thailand. I guess that it's not the first time for you guys to be in Thailand. Many of us have been here several times. Someone might have been here this time for the first time. Okay, welcome. For this afternoon session, the topic is about accounting, economics, laws, and diplomacy for the post-21st century. If you have listened to the morning session, you know this morning session it was about the disruptive technology, and it was very interesting session as well. I attended that one, and I was thinking that it's really linked to this afternoon session very much. Because for us, this is a social science, and very interesting to also know that how this disruptive technology has come and also played a very important part in our life. Okay, and for this afternoon session, before we go to the talks for this afternoon session, I'd like to promote something about the evaluation form. I guess that everyone who's here has received the evaluation form, right? Have you received the evaluation form? It's a paper form. We need to, I would like to ask for your collaboration to fill the form, okay? Later, and please give me the form back, the filled form back, and then we have a little prize for you guys. You know, that will be very interesting things here, you know, as a reward. Okay? Please submit that later when we finish the session. And for this session, I'd like to announce the topic and also the keynote speakers. It's very honor for us to have our keynote speakers here. We have 3 keynote speakers together for this afternoon session. For the first topic, okay, we will have the chance to listen to the globalization and populism. And this is a social and political implications and rapid technological change. This is going to be the first topic for this afternoon. And the second topic will be fintech, the new normal. How come fintech has become the new normal for us? Okay, and the third topic, it is about the integrity of the professional, justice of the system. And we like to say that, well, the integrity, personal integrity and professional integrity will play an important role in our business and in this rapid changing world, how the integrity will play a part. Okay, and I'd like to introduce the first keynote speaker for this session on the topic of the globalization and populism, social and political implication of rapid technological change. And our professor actually flew from New Zealand, but not recently, right? He has been to Thailand 4 months. I have interviewed him this morning, and he has been in Shanghai for 4 months, and it's very great honor for us to have him here at our session. And he is from the University of Canterbury in New Zealand. And the fields of his research is about the Southeast Asia politics, about the democratization, civil-military relations, and nationalism, and also Chinese politics. Okay. Well, I think he expands that into the Thai politics as well. We'll come and have a listen. And his research fields, also his research interest is about the comparative politics and Southeast Asia. And he has experienced a lot about the Asian countries and have been around in Asia for many years. Have the experience, have been to Thailand, I think, countless times. It's a very great honor to welcome our professor. I'd like everyone to join me to welcome Professor Dr. James Opie. Yes, please.
Thank you. That's very kind. Can you hear me without the microphone? Better hear you then. Yes. So that's really where we're going. Let's start, since this is a topic about globalization.
Microphone very much good. You should get closer to your mouth.
Okay. We might just talk about this is about this one.
No, it's actually there.
Talk about globalization, we'll start with the globe, from Maryland, the U.S., the state of Utah, Sanpete County, and that is from Utah. Home Snow College, go Badgers. From Utah is a typical American small town. It has a town theater, and Anderson Drugs, and a milk shop. All three of those were built before I was born. This is the new City Hall. We also have new things, but you can see right next to the new City Hall is a building so old it actually has a false facade. All the kind we used to see in the Old West. We still sometimes see in the Old Western movies. Ephraim, Utah is a very typical in many ways American town. It's also got its negative side right now. Right there on the right, 1907, that's the Bank of Ephraim. It is now also the bankrupt Bank of Ephraim, out of business, so it is now. There's our local hotel, which is closed, hasn't been open for years. This one is so closed and falling apart. You can see weeds in the parking lot. It's the only major factory the town of Ephraim has ever had. It closed in the 1970s. And you can see there's just nothing here. And that leads to foreclosures, foreclosures, but even wealthier people have their homes foreclosed. What's going on in the United States? There you go. Ephraim is a small town far from Mexico, but we still have a very large migrant community from Mexico. You can see they tend to be in not very good housing. This was condemned not long ago, and they were going to be evicted. This is right on the outskirts of Ephraim. That's actually the cemetery right here. This new spot. Anybody guess what that building is right there? That one building is the reason why Ephraim is better off than any town with a profit offers around, despite all the erosion that I just shown you. A typical small town America. That building is a Walmart. America is turned into a Walmart, geographically centered style economy. There's a Walmart every 50 kilometers. And if your town is the one that got the Walmart, you'll be okay. And if you're in the other town that didn't get the Walmart, it's even worse. This is where populism goes. Ephraim, Utah, population has doubled since 1990. That's far higher than state and national rates. People are moving here because it's one of the few places where there are jobs. Still 90% white, but there's a growing minority community, 10% Hispanic. The entire town has about 60 people from Asia and a handful of people from other races. 31% of all people in Ephraim, Utah live below the poverty line. We seldom think of countries like the U.S. having high levels of poverty. But 1 in 3 people in Ephraim, Utah are below the poverty line. Unemployment is 4.4%. That's not bad, but it's twice what it is in the big cities. And so people move out in large numbers. And in fact, Ephraim, Utah has a male to female ratio of 80 to 100 because so many men have had to move out and go elsewhere to find work. You can see unemployment 2017, the darker the color, the higher the unemployment rate. Look at that, there's the Walmarts. And you can see there are all the light colored areas where employment is a little bit better. And And then, if we look at the election, the darker the blue on the right, the more likely the higher the vote count for Trump, and you will see it matches up almost entirely with unemployment, except for this corner of the state down here. Anybody care to guess why this corner of the state doesn't match up? It's a Native American reservation, but they did not vote for Trump. So you can see that this is where populism begins. And here's the vote count. Trump in San Diego County, he won 65% of the vote, way higher than the national average. This is the kind of place where populism goes and where people like Donald Trump are able to win. What is populism? Populism sees ordinary people as somehow being better than experts, because the experts they have too much knowledge, and we can't depend on them. We have to instead depend on ordinary people. That's one characteristic. Secondly, it manifests itself as nationalism, nativism, xenophobia, anti-intellectualism, anti-elitism. They're anti-state, anti-establishment, and anti-foreign. Now, we see populism growing not just in the city, but all around the world, as you notice in all these points. One last thing we want to mention is there's a powerful erosion of support for democracy with populism. And we saw both Bernie Sanders people and Donald Trump's people talk about the system as rigged. Democracy is not working properly because it's rigged. And of course, anyone in Thailand will have heard the same thing about rigged democracy. It doesn't work. This is populism. Obviously, this is a powerful challenge to the organization. Zoom back out to the world. Zoom in. There's Thailand. And zoom in to the northeast. And zoom in a little closer. Tommy. And there you go. When I first came to Thailand, Tommy was a small town built around 3 traffic circles and almost nothing else. Now it's a very, very large metropolis. You can see the clock tower is now electronic. That's a pretty big symbol of progress. The clock towers are no longer clocks, they're electronic. And, sorry, they have a brand new city hall, just like Ephraim with a brand new provincial hall. If Walmart is the symbol of small town America, what's the symbol of provincial Thailand? Yeah, it depends on which class you're looking at. Oh, sorry, before we get to that, sorry, I forgot I had these. People are left behind to do too, of course. And you can see, lots of people have not benefited from that example. Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting which is which. Okay, yeah, depending on which class you're looking at, it's either big C or it's central. Central has put shops in all around the country. And they're in certain towns and they're not in other towns. And it affects the geography of the country. Central Festival in New York is one of the most fascinating places I've ever been in my life. I went there 3 years ago. I began wandering through and something seemed fun to me. I couldn't figure out what it was. Here's a picture of Central Festival, and I wandered through, and eventually I realized there were 2 things that were really surprising that happened after I was down with the base on the country. First, there were hardly any people in here, even though it's massive, full of all kinds of great shops. Hardly anybody was there. Secondly, after I went down to the basement, I realized what seemed funny to me. Almost everybody above the basement was middle class, and most of them looked somewhat Thai, not Northeastern at all. But if you go down to the basement, the entire basement floor is covered with little booths. And they sell cheap goods. And Northeastern Thais, poor people, were in the basement. And all the other Thais were white. Come to find out, according to the United Nations, Colombian cities of Bogota, Barranquilla, and Cali in South America, Lagos in Nigeria, Chiang Mai, and Udon Thani in Thailand show the sharpest economic divide in the world. Chiang Mai and Udon Thani are among the most inequitable equitable towns in the entire world, with the rich doing incredibly well and the poor doing incredibly bad. And you can see the United States has gone way down that same path in previous years. You can see this is Ronald Reagan's period of globalization leading along there, and the gap between rich and poor has widened tremendously. If you're in the top 20%, the top 10%, you've done very, very well. Everybody else, flat. No change, no growth, no development. Globalization has not distributed resources evenly to everyone. Some people are being left behind. See the same thing in Thailand? That chart right there, you'll notice, is in Thai. That's the number of billionaires and their net worth. And you can see it's gone up hugely. It's more than doubled in a 4-year period. And up there, you can see the amount's gone up even more than that. We'll try the other microphone. Even I did that. Here's the other really interesting thing about Thailand. Lots of people in the middle class think, we're doing really well. But here it is by decile. And the decile count, if it were an exactly equal society, everyone would get 10% of the income, each decile group. Here's the poorest 10%. They're only getting 1% of all the benefits. And the next is only getting 3%, so the poor are getting badly cheated. But here's the middle class over here. If you're in the top 80%, the top 20% of income earners in Thailand, you're just getting your fair share. Only the top 20%, the 20 wealthiest percent in Thailand is getting more than their fair share. And they're taking a massive share in Thailand. So we have the same thing going on in the U.S. And in Thailand, in terms of this distribution of income. And this is what drives populism. Here we go, Douglas Kellner. Trump's supporters over the years have suffered economic deprivation, political alienation, humiliation, and a variety of hard times. Mortality rates for white males with high school education between the ages of 50 and 54. How many people die in that age group? And you can see the mortality rate for that group, white males with a low education who can't find jobs anywhere, is skyrocketing in the United States. And you can see by comparison, everybody else, the death rate is going down. Why are all those people dying all of a sudden? Alcohol, drugs, suicide, depression. These are people who don't fit in the new economy. And they have nothing to do. And this is the result. And you can see, here's comparison by other countries. And the U.S. stands out even against other countries. And it's a generation and a demographic group, because people who are educated don't fit this, because they can find jobs. There's a group of people who are being left entirely behind. And that's of deep concern. And these are Trump's people. Now, it's geographically concentrated, too, as you know. The Democrats expected to win up here what we call the Rust Belt. Well, that's where none of the jobs are. The red colors are low areas for employment. And the Deep South. And that's where Trump won the election. If we look at Thailand, we find something incredibly similar. These are migrated workers, people who had to leave home to find a job. And it's graded by region. So the central region is on the far left, and we move across regions as we go to the right. Anybody care to guess what this region is right here? That is Isan. Large numbers of Northeasterners have had to go elsewhere to find work. Again, being left behind by rapid change in the global economy. Kellner again. They appear to be looking for a political savior. Trump thus presents himself as a superhero. In this fairy tale, the billionaire king will fight and destroy all the nation's domestic and foreign enemies. Superman will triumph and provide a happy ending. There he is, Captain America Trump. course, he's not the only one who has portrayed himself as a superhero. And of course, if you like that slide, we have Francis James.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
These are all populism. And these are all appealing to people as the superhero to the rescue who will solve them, save them from the difficulties of globalization. And I obviously didn't make these. People, supporters make these. What's going on here? The important thing to keep in mind is populism is not a cause. You're not going to solve the problems by attacking populism. Populism is a result. These people are victims of the way globalization is currently proceeding. Now, that doesn't mean that we should just ignore them. We need to do something to solve the underlying problems. Don't beat the victims up with a stick. Look for what caused the problem in the first place. And that's what I think is the big issue going forward. So in my mind, populism is coming about because of the way globalization is occurring. What do I mean by that? Many years ago, Gary Tepper wrote this. Up until the 1970s, the expansion of capital was always as national capital. You had Japanese capital, American capital, Thai capital, Chinese capital. It was always national. From the 1970s, capital began to expand more than ever as simply the company. Ownership began to correspond less and less with National Geographic's globalization as the close of the national history of capital and the beginning of the history of the expansion of capital sans nationality. Capital broke out of sovereign boxes first. Capital was the first to go global. Capital was the first to globalize. And not surprisingly, it's the best organized and the best resourced. When we have competitions or negotiations, who wins? Whoever's best organized and best resourced. We can see an example of this very, very quickly. Of course, who's left out? The states. We tend to forget that states have been heavily damaged by globalization, and also ordinary people have fallen behind in the way we're globalizing today. Let's look a little bit further at this. I'll go through this quickly, sorry, I know I'm coming close to my time. The World Economic Forum, this is the one that everybody loves to complain about, and there are all kinds of conspiracy theories, but if you go to its webpage, it was created in 1971, headquartered in Geneva, Switzerland, center of capitalism, and especially global capital. People send capital there so it can't be taxed, right? The World Economic Forum provides a platform for the world's 1,000 leading companies to shape a better future. Better for who? Members and partners benefit from tailored engagement based on their company strategy. The deeper a company's engagement, the greater is its ability to shape the forum agenda. Now, I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong here. This is a competition, and they've organized, and they've resourced themselves, and they're competing. But they got into the playing field first. And so they're benefiting at everyone else's expense. One of the ways they've benefited most is by convincing the states and everyone else that the interests of capital have to be separated from other interests. So the interests of labor, the interests of the environment, all those interests get set aside while we talk about free trade. And we talk about it completely separately. And everything else has to be talked about completely separately. And that actually benefits capital a lot, because they can talk about how to increase free trade without talking about all the people who will lose jobs, or without talking about how the environment might be damaged, but only talk about increasing trade, which benefits them. And they've been very effective at this. The WTO is the very best example. The WTO historically claimed that it wanted full employment. If you look through all its foundational documents, there's one reference to labor in all of its documents, and that's prison labor, which it doesn't apply. Doesn't talk at all about labor standards, labor rights, unions, nothing in the WTO. Completely separated, only trade. The same is true, of course, for the environment and all the rest of it. You may remember, if you're old enough, 1999, there were massive demonstrations at the WTO meetings in Seattle in the United States, and it led to violence. And after that, they began inviting NGOs to the WTO forums. They separated them, and they talked separately, and then capital gets together somewhere else. That's the real business. So the NGOs are sort of there, but not really. But it's a step ahead in a contest that capital is winning. When you look at its success, we saw a little bit before the gap between rich and poor widening, which is one way capital is winning. And here's another way that's hugely important. This is corporate tax paid as a percentage of GDP for the United States. And you can see the amount of tax revenue the United States government has gotten from corporations has declined consistently from the 1940s. There's one time it reversed slightly at the end of the Bush period, and then it went back down again. Donald Trump's just announced he's going to cut corporate tax rates in half, which will hugely, again, undermine government revenues. Now, it's important to keep in mind, this is not just good for corporations. This is bad for governments. Governments need money to do lots of things we like build roads, or help poor people, or pay for universities or schools. And to the degree they lose revenue at that kind of a rate, they can't do things that we as societies hope they will do. And so capital is actually undermining the power of national governments. And that's really important to keep in mind. One reason why we have seen the rise of ASEAN and the EU is because that's a means to grow state governments bigger, so that they can actually respond more effectively to capital. So far, it's not working as effectively as we would hope, or we wouldn't have Brexit, and we would have lost more support from citizens for these kinds of organizations. They're not focused yet on the right things. All right. For centuries, sovereign states employed democratic or other political institutions to regulate and control capitalist markets, assuring a balance between liberty and equality, competition and justice, goods and jobs. Because we could vote, we had a means to check or balance capital. And in fact, Barber argues that's actually good for capital too, because they're so greedy, he believes, that at some point they'll take all the money and there will be nobody left to buy their goods. So they will essentially destroy themselves if they're not checked. Now, though, capital went outside the boundaries of the state, and you can no longer control capital. And you can no longer guarantee that your state has the resources it needs. Capitalism has escaped its democratic box. Populists who claim that democracy is rigged actually are not right. It's not rigged per se. What's happened is the state can no longer control capital. Because capital will just say, if you don't like it, I'll go somewhere else. And so you can't raise taxes, you can't protect the environment, you can't do the things you want to do. Okay. What about citizens? Citizens are the least well-resourced and the least organized of any group. They're almost entirely unorganized, traditionally, especially at the local level. So we have international organizations that try to represent people. The ILO, International Labor Organization, for example, is meant to represent workers. But it's poorly resourced and poorly organized and largely ineffective. NGOs, as we know, are not democratic themselves. How many of you voted for president of the Red Cross the last time they had an election? Oh, that's right, they won't have elections. NGOs do not have democracy, so it's not really a solution to the problem. They also tend to be poorly resourced, poorly organized, and often ineffective, at least outside their own spheres. They can't effectively fight for the rights of all across different issues. What we have then is globalization, where capital sees the advantage because it has the best resources, the best organization, and it's mostly getting the benefits. And that's the problem with globalization. That's the problem with populism. And if we don't solve that underlying problem and put states and ordinary people on more equal footing with capital, we're not going to win against populism. It's not going to happen. And Barbara said pretty much the same thing. Unless we can make the national and local participation of citizens symmetrical with the power of transnational and global anarchic players, there are likely to be no answers to injustice and marginalization. We have to build up the resources of states and ordinary citizens to compete more effectively with capital in the challenge that's ahead of us. So states are going to need to cooperate better, so it's harder for capital to say, if you don't do this for us, we'll go somewhere else where they will. You don't lower taxes, we'll go to another country that will lower taxes. If you don't let us destroy the environment, we'll go somewhere else where we can. States need to be strengthened to do that. And regional bodies like the EU or ASEAN are the groups that need to lead the way. Beyond that, ordinary citizens have to find a way to get involved in the globalization agenda. And that's the biggest challenge, because they're not well organized and they're not well resourced. NGOs can help some, but as we've seen, they're just not enough. So where to go from here? I don't have final answers, but I have some optimism, and it is technology leading the way. With this optimism, this is the last thing we have. Organization. Social media allow ordinary citizens like you to get organized for all kinds of things. The Arab Spring, all across the Middle East, people organized and demanded democracy using the internet. It can be used in other ways. The Trump and Sanders organizations, both populist, use social media very, very effectively. So technology may be bringing us the tools we need to increase organization among ordinary people so they can have more of a say in globalization. Secondly, for resources, fintech, the new financial technologies also hold out hope for ordinary citizens. And especially that's true with crowdsourcing and peer-to-peer loans. And we probably know both the Sanders campaign and the Trump campaign were underfunded compared to competitors, but they very effectively used some of these techniques, and that helped them to do very well in their election. So fintech for resources, social media for organization, both hold out considerable hope in helping to empower citizens to have a greater role in globalization. That's basically what I have to say. Again, I'm not anti-globalization. I just think the agenda is a little bit shifted too far in one direction right now. We need to balance the power of the different players. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dr. James Oki. When I first listened to your talk, I have to admit that I didn't quite understand the linkage between the two, the globalization and populism. But then it came into my understanding a little bit at the time, that if you agree with me, you know, when he showed us the pictures of the situation, the political situation in Thailand, it came to my understanding. Okay, I got it a little bit at the time, you know. And it seems to me that you are a big fan of the Donald Trump. If not, well, maybe not. Okay, good to know that. Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you very much for that. You know, we know the pros and also the cons of the globalization. Well, I think we have a lot to discuss about this. Actually, days would be enough. You know, not hours like this, like today we have time. But I will leave the questions and answers to the later part of our session. Then I'd like to ask you to touch upon about the fintech, right? Because the technology will help us to some extent about this. Well, welcome for the newcomers, okay? You missed the first great presenter, okay? But luckily you will also have listened to two more keynote speakers for our session. For the next keynote speaker, okay, the topic is about fintech, the new normal. As I already said at the beginning, that fintech as a financial technology, right? We know the full term of the financial technology, and then the short one is fintech. Okay, how the fintech affects to our life. I'd like to raise this question and get you to be well aware of these fintech technology changes in nowadays. And the topic is about the fintech, and we will come to understand a little bit more. As in the morning we already understand a little bit, but we'll come more what is understanding about the fintech. And our second keynote speaker is very well experienced in this topic, and she is the head of the consulting of the PwC Thailand. It's a PricewaterhouseCoopers, and she is a consulting lead partner of the PwC, and also responsible for the overseeing of management consulting practice, which provides the services in the areas of the strategy and also the business transformation program or the change management, information technologies as well. Okay, and she has earned lots of experience in this fintech financial technology. Before coming to today conference, I have searched the internet. Nowadays, when we know nothing or know little thing about something, what we will do is to search the internet. And then I searched, the technical term as fintech Thailand. What happened? It came up with this our keynote speaker. Okay, then she is very popular person in this topic, and then every one of us will come to have a listen together with me. Okay, please join me in welcome Kun Vilaypon Thavilapanpo from PwC Thailand.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. It's good to be here. Thank you, Dr. Katie, for the introduction, and Dr. Dev as well. Your last slide is nice into my session. So my name is Vilaypon. I am a partner from PricewaterhouseCoopers Consulting. I'm from PwC, but I'm not an accountant or an auditor, I'm a technology person. And I've been in the industry for over 25 years now. So good to be here and speak about fintech, which is quite popular these days. So who here hasn't heard of the term fintech before? No, right? Obviously, right, you haven't heard of this term. It has been very popular in the media coverage, and fintech has been driving dramatic changes in the financial service sector. So, good to be able to talk about it today. So, given the time, I believe I have about 25 minutes. So, I want to touch on 4 things. One, what is fintech really? Right, so let's have a look today. And second, this is from PwC survey. So, we have done an annual survey on fintech, and the result of recent survey has just come out. So, I want to share with you some of the highlights. And third, which is quite important, fintech ecosystem. Fintech is such a broad term, so let's have a look at within fintech, what are the key focus areas? And this fintech ecosystem change every day. So we're interested, you have to actually keep searching and keep yourself up to date, because technology moves so fast these days. So that's why there are new fintech, there's the old fintech who don't survive. So I do recommend if you're interested in the topic, do check into fintech ecosystem, understand how much it has evolved. And the last thing, what you can do today, right? How would you adjust? And this is a slide that I speak to most of my clients as well. As an entrepreneur, business owner, financial industry, or for each of you as an individual person, what you have to change to be able to stay updated in the world. So quick one, what is fintech? Oops, sorry. So fintech is the convergence of financial services and technology. Fintech is a company, usually a startup, that leverage emerging technology or advancement of technology to innovate financial services. Fintech has been changing the way that we do transactions, the way that you invest, the way that you do payment, deposit, apply for a loan, or even check credit rate if you wouldn't believe it. So fintech is actually a small company, but some have become very large and compete directly with financial institutes. So over the past, I believe in Thailand, over the past 24 months, we have seen the number of fintech in Thailand increasing exponentially. And we have now an organization called Thailand Fintech, a proper association led by Bukwan Chotikawani. He actually see the popularity and see that fintech can really help drive changes in financial services in Thailand and help with the financial inclusion as well. So he himself has funded and actually formed this organization to help promote fintech in Thailand and encourage people like yourself or interested to actually try to explore this one. So what has been driving fintech? How come fintech has become so popular? So 5 factors. One is innovation. Because technology only gets better and better every day, right? So whoever knows how to leverage this in the business will win. So fintech is a group of technology companies that focusing on using technology to improve the quality of financial services. So they pick up one idea, use the advanced technology like P2P, blockchain, Bitcoin to improve the quality of financial services. So this has been the key driving force, and it actually helped change financial service model as well. I have a few examples on my latest slide on what are the top fintechs that have been very successful in the market. The second one is funding. Fintech is a small company, right? It won't survive without money. So over the past 24 months, we have seen, especially in Thailand, a lot of investment, a lot of funding from the government, from regulators, from financial institutes, from venture capital, investing heavily into fintech. And that helps keep fintech alive. And it can use the money to actually stay afloat and be able to continue with the innovation and help launch new services. And big financial services like banking, if you look at the news, right? Kasikorn Bank, Siam Commercial Bank, and many other banks are investing heavily in fintech with the funding that they provide. And the third factor is market penetration. I think this link might be to your slide as well. If you look at the overall population in Thailand, there are still a large percentage of people who do not have access to good quality banking services because they're not interested. Or back there, they're the segment that don't really make money or make profit. So banks actually ignore them. And this has become an opportunity for small companies like fintech that so those guys can still have access to good quality banking services through fintech. You don't have to go to the bank. Like if you want to apply for a loan, a quick loan, short loan, and you don't have good credit rating, you still can get money by going through fintech. And this has opened up a new opportunity, a huge new segment, which actually become, and back then, when they start to see the fintech actually make some money from this one, back they get interested and say, hey, let's have a look, right? Because they don't want to ignore this segment. So fintech has helped with market penetration. And the fourth one, product life cycle. You're a bank, big financial institutes, insurance or banking, to launch any new product or new service, it will take months. Let's say if you are an insurance company, to launch a new policy, internally the whole process takes sometimes 4 to 6 months. And then there's an external process. You need to get OIC approval. OIC is a regulator that regulates the insurance company. So the whole process will take a year, right? But fintech, given the size, has the ability to actually turn ideas into actions and then into new service pretty quickly. So from years, it could reduce to weeks. And that's pretty effective and attractive to people like us when we get to access new services very quickly. You don't have to wait for banks or insurance for weeks and days. So this product lifecycle time to market has reduced significantly because of fintech. And back when you start to see the fintech has the ability to launch new service quickly, they actually look at themselves and say, how come I'm very slow for big financial institute, but it takes me forever. So they adjust the services themselves and process internally to be able to actually launch service new quicker. And the last one, customer impact. Customer like you and I, we actually like to have good quality banking service with cheap fee. So fintech actually, I'm not sure if any of you have used fintech service before, like peer-to-peer or apply for a loan. Actually quite effective, very quick. So we actually feel that we have good experiences with fintech, and we didn't expect the bank to be able to provide the same quality of services as well. So these are the 5 factors that drive growth. And we will continue to see the big growth in the number of fintech companies in Thailand. The next thing I want to mention, and you see these logos, I'm sure most of you, or all of you are customers of these companies. Apple, Uber, who hasn't used Uber before? You don't live in this generation. So Apple, Uber, and what is this? Amazon, right? So what have in common? They are technology companies, right? So what Apple does is Apple is very well known for anywhere, anytime services. You want to buy music, movie, you can just go to Apple anytime you want to, right? Or Uber is an on-demand product. You don't need a car. Who needs a car these days, right? You need a taxi, you just pick up the mobile phone, just say, click the app here, pick me up at Brunswick University, or go to Ceylon Square. You don't need a car anymore. On demand, anytime, anywhere. And the third thing is Amazon, right? Amazon is well known to have a very good analytics. It can actually predict what you want to buy next. If you, I'm not sure if you have bought a book from Amazon before, I certainly one of the customers. If you bought a book from Amazon, it would then recommend you that given your profile, you look at our database, people like, if you have similar profile, also bought this book. So we suggest you should look into this one as well. So that's a very good analytic program to help upsell and cross-sell Amazon products. So people like you and I, we are the customer, we use these services from Google and Apple and Amazon, and we feel they're pretty amazing. So we then expect the financial services, banks, insurance should be able to give us the exact same experiences. And that's actually helped drive change in fintech and help grow fintech as well. Because people bring experience from outside financial services into financial services. So that's another thing that helps both the growth for fintech. So PwC does a global survey every year because we want to keep track of what's going on in the world. So one of the surveys is fintech report, and this has just came out part of the press. You can go to the website and have a look at the full report. It's actually pretty good. It has some highlights that will show you what are the trends that are coming to Thailand. So the fintech survey, we interviewed over 1,300 participants across 71 countries, across 6 regions, and these are CEO and head of strategy who are responsible for innovation and strategy. So I can only show you a couple of highlights given the time limitation. So this is one of the questions that we asked. So we asked these people, so what financial activities do you think that your customers are already using fintech? Right, so these are the responses. Focus on the top 3 ones. Payment. People already use payment, not going to bank, use Alipay, Apple Pay, social payment, so many form of application to go to payment without going to the bank. Second, fund transfer. Who needs bank these days? Right? If I want to transfer the fund from the city, I don't need a bank, I just pay over phone, right? Pull out the application, and I can just then transfer money to you. So that's the bank in this picture. You don't need a bank, right? And then personal finance, you need a quick loan. You don't have to go to filling out application, go to fintech, right? It's easier and quicker, and you still get the money. Maybe at even a cheaper rate. So just an example that people are actually using the services, they actually ignore the bank entirely. The second one, we then asked bank financial institute as well that for them to retain the customer, what do they think they have to do? So the answer broken down to payments, banking, insurance, asset and wealth management. So interestingly, the answers came out to be exactly the same. So they all say that to compete with fintech, what they have to do is to make their services easier to use, easier, quicker, more innovative, right? Not surprising all of us. If they don't change or move quick enough, they will be losing, and they have been losing market share to fintech companies already. And then we then ask, right, so because fintech is backed up by technology, so we ask big financial institutes, so over the next 12 months, what do you plan to do? What kind of technology do you want to invest in? And these are the answers. The top 3, First, not supply data analytics. There's a lot of data these days. People have mobile phone. They don't use the phone for making phone calls. They use the phone for application. They generate data every single day. And with Industry 4.0, Thailand 4.0, there's a lot of, there's going to be even more data that generate to the world. So whoever can analyze the data, understand the behavior, get customer insight, will win, right? So that's why analytics will become a key part to every company. And that's the top technology that people will invest in. And second, mobile, right? I'm sure all of you have more than one mobile. I have 3 personally, so I can always be reachable, right? And mobile is our smartphone, their computer, their supercomputer, right? You may ask me, and I ask this question, you look at the phone, right? How many percent that use the phone for the phone feature, the typical phone, making phone call and receiving phone call? 0.1%. We use the phone 99% for application, for data, for social program, for work, for making appointment, uses a camera. So this is how wonderful the phone is these days. And it has been used as a media to transact the business, to communicate with the client, to connect with your potential customer. So there are a lot more investment that we've seen that will go to mobile. And the third one, and this has become popular as well, artificial intelligence, which is a technology to simulate human beings. In fact, this actually has become quite real. I'm actually doing a proof of concept for my banking client in Thailand to use robots to replace humans in certain applications. So there are a few projects that look into like accounting processes or even loan approval process. You can actually use bots to replace some of the human being processing, which is quite cool, right? Bot can go to 3 a.m. in the morning, bot never get tired, bot will not complain, bot will not moan, right? So actually that's quite attractive. And actually big companies are investing into this heavily. That becomes quite scary. Okay, so that's there are a lot more questions that we ask clients, so feel free to check out the website for the full report. So fintech ecosystem. This picture changes every day. This is the latest one that I download. This is what ecosystem looks like, right? Fintech is such a broad term. If you look into the focus area for fintech, the big one is lending. Fintech focusing on giving money to people. Lending Club is the biggest one. It started from a small company and it got listed at the stock exchange in the US. And bank got so scared that they're afraid that Lending Club will take market share. And then trying to become a partner with Lending Club. And then personal finance, payment, remittance, and all other. There's so many groups, there's so many focuses that each of the company focus on. But these pictures, like I mentioned, change every day. Some will disappear because they won't make it. But some will, with a good funding, and we continue to evolve themselves, they can become real and then become one of the financial services firm in the future. In Thailand, I think we have a number of fintech companies as well. I think the number, I don't have a recent latest number, but it's probably 200 by now. The top one, I'm showing you about Chitta, focusing on investment or claim, focusing on making claim quicker to insurance company, and a few others. Things stay connected because the world changed very quickly these days, and this one become quite interesting to see how it evolves. So a few key one I want to mention. This is the top one called Prosper. It's startup that has become very popular. What they do is they provide peer-to-peer lending platform. Meaning you need money, you don't need to go to a bank. You can just go to the application, put in a request. And then you can actually check out this is the list of people who actually want to loan money. Right? So this system acts like a platform. They match people who want to loan, people who want to lend money to other people. So they are, and they act almost like a bank. They also have a process to check credit rating as well. So you don't just get money whenever you request, but there's a process to go through. So there is a process to check credit rating. But how do you do that? This is on the right-hand column. These are the process to check credit rating, right? For those who don't have good, record critical role, they can apply to this application by going to a field questionnaire, fill out a questionnaire like what are you going to be using the money for, what's your monthly income, and what amount you want to go through. So, and then the application will assess your credit rating. So if you want to apply for a loan, use money for gambling, you might get 0 score. But if you want to apply for a loan to pay for student loan, right, then you might get 10 scores. So there's a process to go through. And behind this application, there's a robotic engine that assesses yourself and give you the rating. So quite interesting because the loan amount isn't big, right, and it's become quite popular. Some fintech applications offer larger amount of loan, like $5,000 US or more, but this one is a small one, but become pretty popular. Because when you need a quick cash, you don't want to borrow from your friends or parents, you can just go to the application. Another one that is quite interesting is robo-advisor. It's an investment website fully backed up by robotic application, meaning it's not human who will be talking to you on the website or advising you where to invest, how to invest, how much to invest. Behind the engine is artificial intelligence. Just smart enough is machine learning, so that she will learn from the historical record and be able to provide advice to you on where you should invest. So this application started off as a really small company and become quite popular because the fee amount is 0. If you want to invest, if you go to a bank line, how much we have to pay? that's quite an significant amount. But fintech, like this one in particular, most investing $0. That's why it becomes attractive. And it's not annoying as well because some investor sometimes can be quite annoying when they stick you on the phone. And there are a lot more as well, like this one in particular focus on cyber security. So in the future, right, security will improve. And this one, the one I like is because it uses behavior based to authenticate, to show who you are. Let me just explain for you. So let's say you have a phone, right? And I'm sure all of you set up a passport for the phone. If you don't, you should actually do so. Because that's one way to improve security. So if let's say I try to steal Dr. Kelly's passport, I can then type it in and become her, right? So this technology will prevent that. Even if I have her passport, but I type it in with my pattern, I will not be able to log in because it will actually detect the pattern. That's why it's called behavior-based authentication. You need to have information, you need to have the exact same speed that called behavior. Yeah, which is good. That's a good recommendation chain often. But this one will actually say, if this technology become alive in the future, it will actually reduce the hacking or stolen of information. Because even if I have your passport, but I don't type with your pattern, right, then I can't log in. So another group of fintech that focus on cyber security. So there are a lot more. So within DBC, we feel that things move fast as well. So we actually have our own platform to keep track of fintech, right? To see how many new companies, what services they're focusing on, how many get funding, what kind of funding, for us to actually stay up to date with technology, and we actually ask clients to sign up for this as well. And lastly, given the fast pace of technology, fintech is just one area. There are insurtech for insurance, utilitech for utility, regtech for regulator, like government tech, and a lot more small companies that are backed up by technology. So as an individual entrepreneur or business owner, what you should do? Well, a few recommendations. First, start to understand technology a bit more. There are so many emerging technology. I haven't even touched on drone yet, or AI, or I just need a day to go through that. I'm actually very surprised too. But technology change, it will only get better, make your life better, easier. So I think stay up to date, explore how it can help your business or in the future your organization you'll be working for. Second, if you cannot compete with fintech or this technology company, what you should do? Well, partner with them. If you have money, you can partner them, or buy them, partner with them, join venture with them. Or then find ways to work with them. Fintech can be a good R&D for you. They have great idea, and they were able to actually convert idea into action pretty quickly, maybe quicker than you. Sometimes large organizations have too many bureaucratic and processes to go through. So if there are ways to partner with fintech, I think that would be a great way. Integrate to innovate. Many companies do not innovate fast enough, they will no longer be in the business. If they are very lucky, because business change, technology change, right? So organizations have to adjust and evolve and innovate. Create an IT culture. You don't have to be a deep IT expert. What you have to do is to understand how IT can help you and be able to help improve the customer experiences. And then I think last thing I want to touch on is company culture. Many clients that I work with would like to become digitized business, digital company, digital enterprises. So I should ask them, do you have a digital culture yet? It's not just about having money to invest in technology, you actually have to have digital culture. The culture that you are encouraging people to explore technology, try, experiment, and don't whip them up when they fail. Right? Because big corporates sometimes have that behavior, right? If anybody try, come up with a new idea and try and fail, then they will be penalized. So that's not digital culture. Digital culture is you are encouraging people to bring idea to work, right? Try the idea. Give them the opportunity to convert their idea into action. Because people like Apple, Uber, these are from small organizations that have good idea, they have digital culture to encourage people to convert into idea and then continue to evolve and then they become big organizations. So I think for those who actually want to convert to digital organization, they must have the culture to allow that to happen. So foster company culture, allow talent to come out, to shine, to try new things, and then become successful. Okay, so I think I have. All right, any questions?
Thank you very much, Khun Vilaypon, Lapangpong. I think it's pretty clear to us to some extent that fintech has played a very important role in our lives, not just for the student's life, the business life. You know, when you go, when you graduate and you go into your future career, you know, your jobs. You know, it's very interesting to see that how we adapt ourselves. You know, and this has become very important to us. I think we have quite a lot of questions, you know, to ask about the fintech, and I believe that will be very interesting questions as well. And as she was talking about the Prosper, very interesting. We also have that in Thailand in the very old version we call, we play Tok Chair. And then we play Tok Chair, and then people who want to give loans or who want to borrow will go and group together. You know, that's a very old version. Now we need to have the digital culture. Very interesting. And the next, and also the last presenter for this afternoon sessions will be on the very also interesting topic about the integrity. And I'd like to welcome the professor from Japan and Professor Morikiwa Yasutomo from Meiji University, the School of Law in Japan. And he has actually flew to Thailand one day ago, and I'm very honored to have him with us today. Please welcome him.
Thank you so much. Before I go into my talk, let me try to explain how my talk will be related to the first two talks, which is, I'm pretty good at this, so let me see. Okay. Jim or James? Jim. Jim has said that perhaps technology is the answer to make the global application something that's not malignant but beneficial to human beings. And he has, if I can say so, depicted capital as a sort of organized core, which has to be dealt with in an effective way using technology. Your presentation has made it very clear that first of all, capital does not work in like a Greek fabrics. It's not organized in a static way. We use an euphemism. It has dynamic equilibrium. Put more in plain words, it's basically killing each other to see who ends up on top, becoming the alpha male. So it's the rat race in a very sophisticated field. If that's what organization of capital is all about, the more we learn about technology and how it can be practiced, I think if we apply that to the organization of citizens, then yes, technology might indeed be the answer. But, and here's the important message that I want to convey in my talk today. As long as you act as an individual, you cannot help but be like chimpanzees trying to become the alpha male. So if you are going to seriously adapt technological knowledge to citizenship, to make globalization into something that we like and can manage, we have to start thinking in terms of we. Rather than I, my, me, we have to think in terms of we the people and what we should do for our common interest. And that's what justice is all about. And I will try to show that today. A couple of things. Okay. First of all, in order to have an organization that can adapt and control globalization, the answer is not a world government. Some say it is. This is a field called global justice. And some say that a world government or a very tightly knit world federation is the answer to the problem. I don't think so. I think a stronger local government, loosely related to each other with the common interest of controlling globalization would be the answer. And in order to have that, we need to have a very good understanding of what makes local governments powerful. And the answer to this is the empowerment of the citizen. How does empowerment of citizen work in a world where globalization, the waves of globalization, before which the power of the individual is nothing, can actually work? And as I said, the answer is to organize the individual person into a group of citizens, which does actually make a difference, even with the way of globalization. And for this, we need a system that can actually represent the public or the common interest of we the people. And so far, the best system that we've got is called a democracy. Democracy works only if two conditions are satisfied. One, the people that we the people hire as managers of the system, we usually call them politicians, but in essence they are civil servants, that is, our servants, behave like servants and not like masters. Then the owners of the system who hire these civil servants, we the people, must be able to act like owners, think like one, and be responsible as owners of our common interest. Okay? And if all local governments sufficiently solidify in this fashion, then we have the elements, the building blocks for organizing globalization. And that is the strategy that I have. And in order to implement this strategy, I need to explain to everyone how democracy works. Those of you who grew up in America may tend to think that you know all about democracy, but you don't. So please be modest for half an hour and then be yours. Okay? social justice, as I said, democracy is not a goal in itself. It's the method by which justice becomes possible. In order to understand democracy, therefore, we have to understand what justice is. And our usual conception of justice as an state, an static state, is not correct. Who says that's not correct? The Romans, people who devised Roman law, people who were best at implementing justice, given the terrible social conditions of those times, they had a very good idea of what justice is. And they said, Justitia est constant, perpetua voluntas, ius sum quicque privuent, which in plain English is justice is the constant, perpetual will to provide each and everyone with one's rights. And this is written in the first part of the Justinian Code, or the Corpus Juris Civilis. I'm going to try to explain what this means by talking about justice of a society or a system. Okay? The owners, remember, to have a democracy, we need to find out whose will it is that, there you go. Whose will are we talking about? Whose responsibility is it to provide each person with one's rights? It's the owners. It's basically the will of the owners of the system. And that's how we, as members of democracy, should think of ourselves. But the people that actually implement the necessary policies for making sure that our wishes are realized are the professionals that we hire to manage the system, usually called the politicians or representatives of the people. Okay? So the important thing is that when we vote for people, we do not choose masters. We choose the servants of for us, who will work for us. And therefore, the civil servants that we choose must have certain qualities that are necessary for that person to be good servants, and not masters. And that's what integrity, about which I'll talk about today, is all about. You will notice that some public servants are better than others. So the obvious question we should ask is, what do they have that lazy-bum civil servants do not have? And the answer is called integrity. People didn't talk about integrity till about a decade ago. Now it's the buzzword. I understand that it is an important concept now that Professor Bicha is not trying to make people in the governmental tie understand. It's been the buzzword OECD and in other international organizations. But like all buzzwords, people don't really know what this means. So today, I'm going to try to put some context into this word. Okay? And I said that what the Romans said was justice is what is meant by integrity. I think, well, I hope you agree that fit goes quite well, and I'll try to demonstrate that. Okay? Now, notice when we discussed justice, we had to find out whose will it was that is needed to provide justice. And the answer is both the owner and the managers must have this particular will, but especially the managers who are our agents, whereas we are the principals. Features of integrity. Okay. So people who must have integrity are our servants. And in order to make clear what integrity is all about, there may be codes. Lawyers have codes of ethics. Codes of professional ethics can be understood as attempts to describe in what integrity consists of. It is difficult to codify, like in the case of the professional ethics of the judge. Principles are used. The important thing is both these attempts come close, but never enough to identify integrity, because this is following the rules. We call this compliance and not integrity. Integrity, as we saw, and I repeat once again, is what we should understand as the Roman law definition of justice. It's this will to provide justice. Notice that here, justice does not mean the end state. It's the attempt to understand the end state as an ideal which regulates us and to which we must try to attain, although we know full well that it will never be fully realized. That's the Kantian idea of what's called a regulative ideal. Character. Integrity, we tend to think that it's something that we have as parts of our professional personality. And that's important, but that's never enough. In order to have that character, you have to have a pretty good understanding of what justice is. And in law schools everywhere, and I have taught in Europe, US, and Japan, as well as in parts of Asia. For some strange reason, justice is never taught in law school. Only law is taught. But I believe that a 90-minute lecture on justice in all law schools do wonders to the education, because it provides us with conditioning too. Now, members of the legal profession, for instance, they need to have the know-how. That is, they need to be able to provide justice, to not just understand them. And that's what we do when we teach in law schools. So I'm going to talk about the three things that are listed here: character, understanding, and how to, the know-how, in this order. So the first part, the character, we can paraphrase this as the professional ethics of the public servant. It should consist of these three things. Okay? On this slide, I'm trying to say that in certain instances, the ethics is described as something that ends in ship. For instance, the professional ethics of the politician is called statesmanship. And that of the sportsmanship. Of a good carpenter, we say that that person has craftsmanship, and a good yachtsman, and yachtsmanship. So what does manship describe? Notice, especially in the case of craftsmanship and yachtsmanship, it's not just character, it's the skill of how to operate the yacht, for instance. And in order to have the skill, you don't need to have physics of dynamics, but you need to have understanding of how a yacht works. And if that works, and people realize that you have the character, understanding, and the skill necessary, then You win the trust and respect of the people, and that gives you power or competence to do the job. And in this case, since we're talking about the public servant, it's the job of actually managing a state. What's the difference between a state and a company? A company serves only the people who buy stocks in that company. So only a fraction of the population. Whereas the state serves each and every citizen. It says state interest is public or universal. It leaves no one behind. It serves the interest of everyone. And of course, your immediate response is, oh yeah, is that possible? And as I said, like the concept of justice, the concept of the state is also an regulative ideal. It's something that we should strive for perpetually and constantly. And we should not say that because a certain sector of society is left out, that state or justice is impossible. Learning to strive for it, recognizing the deficiency, is the important thing. Number two, so the understanding of justice. I hope that by now, this Roman law idea of justice, you're beginning to get the feel of it. Okay? I'm going to relate this to something that is more congenial to you. Okay? Now, remember, justice is the constant and perpetual will of we the people, the owners. And it is implemented by the managers that we hire, that is our public servants. And it is to provide for each citizen with his or her rights. Okay? Notice the prepositions of, by, and for. Doesn't that look familiar? Yes. Government of the people, by the people, agents, and for the people. Abe Lincoln put it very succinctly in describing democracy. But as you can see, democracy is the best instrument by which the Roman law idea of justice can be implemented. So number three, the know-how of justice. I hope that by now you will give me room to say that democracy, yeah, just might be the instrument by which to realize the Roman law idea of democracy. But democracy by itself is not enough, because the question of who has these rights, who are the citizens, these are to be decided in terms of the law of the land. And for that, we need what's called rule of law. People tend to confuse rule of law with democracy, but these two are totally different things. Democracy we did not have until the late 18th century, in full sense. But rule of law was there in the world of Roman Republic, BC 400. Rule of law is a very old concept that was actually in practice for a millennium. But in the stage of democracy, we were able to use it for implementing democracy. And that's why two go together now. And that's what we tend to confuse the two. But to be exact, these two are totally different. Okay? 5 minutes, okay. Because I only have 5 minutes, I'm going to quickly go through this and say that this is entity that always strives for our common interest. Can such an political animal actually exist? And as I said, until the late 18th century, no such animal ever existed. But at the end of the 18th century, on two sides of the Atlantic, in the form of the French Revolution and the American War of Independence, mankind has actually was able to actually see these two animals in action. So yes, the answer is yes. And this is where people are empowered to become the masters rather than the servants of the system. And the system is called democracy because, as you know, in Greek, demos means people, and kratia means power, people power. That's the meaning of democracy. So, I hope that by now, this idea of democracy is there to implement the Roman law idea of justice, which is the perpetual will of the owners of the system to make sure that everyone gets their rights realized. And this has been called the principal-agent relationship. And this is to be distinguished from the patrone-clientere relationship, which is very old, again, goes back to the Roman Republic, and it still exists in Sicilia today. Two very different things. What's the big difference? Principal is the master, whereas the patron is the master. So, the people, we the people in the principal-agent relationship, we are the principal. In a patron-client relationship, people are the clients, that is, the servants of the system, exploited. So, democracy, if we can implement it to a sufficient degree, makes us the owners, the proud owners of the system. And because it's so difficult, and because this basic message is so little understood, that talk about democracy being rigged and such gets currency. The greatest threat to democracy, therefore, externally is war, because wars can destroy all democracies. Internally, it has an enemy just as dangerous as war, and that's corruption. Why? Because to the official definition of the global NGO, Transparency International, it's the abuse of public office for private gain. That is, the agent betrays the principal. And prevention of corruption, therefore, is very important to implement true democracy where we are the masters. And the usual methods that are cited for preventing corruption are usually these. But the whole idea is to make corruption irrational, that is, to make sure that corruption does not pay. Is this enough? And we have found out that it is not. All these methods have been tried on broadband, OECD, everywhere, and the results usually are not very satisfactory. Why? We are missing something, and that's why integrity is now the buzzword in OECD and other international organizations. We found out that besides these external methods, an internal method is necessary for effective mitigation of corruption, and that is integrity of the public servant. So, what does integrity consist in? One, so, requires understanding and knowledge, and in this case, law defines justice of that land. So, knowing the law, and then being able to act according to the law, that is, to implement justice. And then, if the civil servant reflects and see, have I done my job of understanding, implementing justice correctly? Can I do that? Then we have what it takes to be a good public servant, different from the lazy ones that just go through the motions. And if we add this, if we add independence of the public servant and good pay, so that they can directly support their families, then we have an institution that's pretty solid and can work to provide decent democracy. Okay? So, features of integrity we need to understand is that, well, I'm not extensively have done this, and because we're out of time, I won't go through this. But let me just remind you that the word justice is composed of the word use, which, as we saw fleetingly in the Latin expression, which is in modern parlance is right, is included in the word justice. That is, justice or justitia is the state where youth or rights are being respected. The same goes in the German understanding, Recht or rights. Again, when it is respected, when a social state respects Recht, it's called Gerechtigkeit. And Gerechtigkeit is the German word for justice. So both the owners and the agents have this idea that this respect of rights is what justice is all about. Then we have social justice. And in order for we the people, not the public service, but in order for us, the owners of the system, to be responsible owners, understanding justice as being a matter of rights, we need to learn the ABCs of civic education. That is A good owner of the system. You must learn to be a good owner, and B, as well as being a good user of the system. And this equals C, citizenship. And that is why citizenship is so important for democracy and justice. Thank you so much for
Thank you very much, Professor Yasutomo. Well, time is very limited right now. I might leave just only a few questions for us to ask the three professors. Any questions from the floor? Well, I'd like to, maybe I ask the questions while waiting for you guys' questions, the question from the floor, and then we can pass to the next session quickly. And while you're here with us, Professor Yasutomo, I'd like to ask a question, like, because nowadays with the technology, you know, we see that things happen at the other end of the world quickly, right? And I'd like to ask about this. Do you see that as you've been in this area for some time, for many years, 20-something years, with this changing technology, do you see that the improvement or the downside of the integrity of the statesmanship nowadays? Please, just a quick answer to the question.
I'm afraid it hasn't gone well so far. I was in an OECD meeting in Paris just the end of last month, and they talked about integrity and said that former ministers, former top bureaucrats, when they finish their term, they become lobbyists for Goldman Sachs and other places. And all the discussion was based on the idea that they have, if the law allows it, they have every moral right to become a lobbyist. So that's how the state of things was. Of course, I stood up and said that that's not correct. A good public servant, even when they're provided by Goldman Sachs with an offer that they cannot refuse, would still refuse to be a lobbyist. That's what integrity is all about.
Yes. Thank you very much, Professor. I'd like to pass the second question to Kun Vilaypon Lapanpong about the fintech. It's still like, get into my part about the fintech things, you know, the Internet of Things. And my question is about this. If we cannot catch up with the technology, as you said, like we need to catch up, right? And if we cannot, will we lose the opportunity? Or what do you think? Yeah, if we really cannot, like we are left behind, we cannot catch up with the internet, we don't trust the Uber, who's gonna pick us up, or we don't trust the lending system from them using the technology. We will lose the opportunities. Thank you.
It depends on who you are. If you're an individual or you're an organization, business owner. As an individual, you just maybe miss out on some of the exciting technologies. Like the old Uber that you find, you just have a cab in the traditional way. They still come, they still pick you up, but it just make life so much easier. Yeah, English-speaking drivers, anywhere you want to do it, are actually pretty attractive. I think as an individual may be okay, but as an organization, I think that's where it can be a risk or a threat to your business, because things move faster than before, and there are people who will disrupt you, people who will not be in the same industry. And disruption has become the word that business owners are thinking about every day. Who will disrupt me? Am I still going to be in business tomorrow? Am I still going to be in a business 5 years from now? So I think as an organization, as a business owner, you will miss out a lot. You are looking to this carefully, you might not be in the business anymore. I'm sorry to say that.
But that's thank you very much. That's very straightforward. But last but not least, I'd like to raise the question to Representative Oki, that you were saying about the populism. What should we do then if our people are victims of the populism? What should we do? Or how can they do? Do they know themselves? I don't know whether they know themselves. But how can we do with this situation? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. In fact, I think Donald Trump is another form of opium or alcohol that's already destroying the people being left behind. So quite the opposite. I think the way to stop people like Donald Trump is to help the people who are voting for him because they see no other choice. To me, that's what it comes down to. And so the question of how you help them is the crucial one. And to me, the real problem that we have is that capitalism, by escaping state boundaries, has been able to drain all the resources away from states that used to be used for paying for social safety nets. At the time of the Great Depression in the 1930s, and then after World War II again, developed states mostly put in place social safety nets to help people who were experiencing all kinds of problems of change. And we paid for those with no problem, all the way down to the point where global capital began to dominate over national capital. And then global capital would just flee to wherever tax rates were cheaper, and then states had no money to fund social safety nets. And that's what's happening. And so states cannot fund what they used to because capital hasn't gotten out from under the states. And the end result is we have all these people being left behind. That's the way I see it.
Thank you very much. I wish that we have more time than this, and then we can have the discussions longer. Well, time is so limited. If anyone would like to have the questions to all three professors, we can do that after this. But for this session, I might like to end it, and like also to pass on to the next session. I would like to get everyone of us to join me to thank Professor James Oki, to thank Kun Vilaipon Lapakong from PwC, and also to Professor Arikiva Yasutumo. Thank you very much.
So the next session, we will have the speaker that present the paper to us. There will be